It's not what you can do for me. It's more what can I do for you? Because then I become a valuable person to you. And if you can grasp that concept, then you become very valuable to people. I think the mistake that people do, young people specifically, and they'll come to me and goes, what can I do for you? Here's a problem. You're making me think. So you just added an extra step here. Instead, just tell me, hey, I'm going to do this for you. You know what I mean? Like, don't put more. That's a burden. Asking what I can do for you is a burden on that person. That you don't realize that that's what it is. It's more of like, hey, I saw you're working on this. Here are 3 things that I've noticed about that. Oh, okay. That's super interesting. That's helpful to me. So I think it's understand. That's how you build a network ultimately, right? Like you end up finding a bunch of people that kind of rely on each other for various reasons, and then they become your peers.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to It's the Bearded Man podcast with your favorite, the world's favorite bearded man, Bobbbaaaay. Each week with our guest episodes, I try to put the spotlight on someone who, in my eyes, has given themselves permission to live a life authentic to them. Our guest today is from Granada Hills, California. He's the CEO and co-founder of 5-4 Group, a holding company for fashion brands and services. Brands include 5-4, Young and Reckless, New Republic, Grand Running Club, Menlo Club, and more. He's also the co-host on Group Chat podcast, where he and his co-hosts comment on all things business, culture, current events, whatever else they want to talk about. Arguably the number 1 podcast in the world. So they say we might have to box that one out at some point in today's podcast. Today on the podcast, Dee Murthy.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm doing great, man. How are you? Great intro.
Doing great, man. But I'm telling you that the number 1 podcast in the world, I'm like, I don't know. We might have to talk about that today's podcast at some point.
You gotta put it out into the universe for it to happen.
Totally. I think one of the most important things that I've tried to do, even from the beginning of when I started podcasting at episode 1 5 years ago, I was on a different show. I was just interviewing local kids in my hometown. Was even though I wasn't at the level that I wanted to be, I treated it like I was the number 1 podcast in the world. And I feel like that is one of the most important lessons that I've learned. And it's not about having an ego. It's not about thinking you're better than anybody else, but it's just about carrying your head held high and having that confidence that even though you might not be where you want to be just yet, it's like you're almost like mentally preparing yourself. So when that day does come, or the big opportunity comes, you're ready for it because you've just been hyping yourself up all along the way. So when I see things like that, I actually love it because it's just confidence, and it's a way to carry yourself throughout the world. And I have nothing but the most respect for it.
Yeah, it's definitely a great way to lead your life.
Yes. People love that energy. People love it. People love it. It's an interesting time we're doing this podcast, because I think going into the new year, I don't know when it was, but it was around 2002 that you had started 5-4 Group, and at the time it was just 1 brand. So you're really approaching at this point in time almost 20 years of business, which all started back at USC from a senior year project with your co-founder Andres. So 20 plus years. I mean, first of all, that's just massive respect for anybody that can stay consistent for something like that for so long. But what are some of the skills that you've had to develop in order for you to last that long in the game?
I think the first part is patience.
The P word we all hate.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, specifically if you grew up in the digital era, patience is something that's very, very hard to come by for a lot of people, because we live in an instant gratification world, right? You press a button, you get a car. You press a button, you get some food. You want to watch something whenever you want, you can do that. And so
it's crazy.
So if you grew up like that, think about how difficult it is when you go into the workforce or you start your own business and you press a button and what you want doesn't happen anymore. And so to me, I was fortunate enough to grow up in analog world, basically. And it was ingrained in us that everything took forever. And, the first 5 years are the hardest. I mean, I read every day a business that's less than 5 years old that's worth billions of dollars. That happens in today's environment. So it's a gift and a curse, because I grew up in a different era and I've had to unlearn some of those things, because patience was such a big part of our story. But in today's world, you don't necessarily have to be patient. You can move and press a button, and you can try to go as fast as you can. And if it works, you're off to the races. And so I think there's a lot to learn from some of the skills we've learned in the analog world, but in the digital world, it allows you to move a lot faster. So we're caught in the middle, right? We kind of grew up analog. We emerged into digital later in our life. So it's been a learning process just to keep up.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because even before the internet world too, since you're not having this mobile phone where you're paying attention and watching other people make moves on a daily basis, there's no time for you to really fall for the comparison trap or to get caught up scrolling on your Instagram or, watching too much content, which you're then starting to compare yourself. Why isn't my business where it is today? Like, they're crushing it. They've only been in business for 3 months. So it's also interesting thinking back that, like, back then, only 20 years ago, you didn't have any other option but to just do the work or read a book. And other than that, there weren't as many distractions, I don't think, as they are today with this incredible device that's on us 24 hours, 7 days of the week.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, there's probably not that many positives by not having the phone. I think the comparison thing is one thing that's interesting, but even then, I think it's a motivational factor. It's an access factor. It also gives you possibility, right? Like when we started, we never thought you could be a billionaire. Like the idea of being a billionaire, that sounds insane. I have lunch with a billionaire once a week now. I mean, it's just insane. We just live in a different planet, And I think the access to information and people is what's created this incredible environment.
Well, I want to run with that. Having a casual lunch with maybe a billionaire once a week. How has surrounding yourself with these high level people just allowed you to just think bigger and better? Like, I was talking to my barber about that today, where he's the owner of his shop. He wants to, go bigger. And we were talking about the importance of, like, when you're surrounded by the right people, your mind is always thinking of the possibilities, where for a lot of people out there, they're surrounded by people that just push them down or say, like, why would you ever want to try that? So how has surrounding yourself with the billionaires or just people that operate at a high level allowed you to, like, think bigger for yourself?
Yeah, here's the thing. I think when you're starting a business or you're trying to be inspired and you're young and you want to go meet people, you think hanging out with a billionaire is going to be helpful to you. Reality is it's not. Instead, you should find peers in your industry, peers that are like-minded, your age group, and just use them as your motivation, use them as your mentor, use them as your sounding board. All of my friends who are billionaires, I knew them when they were dirt broke starting their business. It's not like I just met them last year. These are people I've known for 20 years, literally since I was, 18, 19 years old. And we all watched each other's businesses and careers have its various ups and downs. And they've just been more fortunate than I am. And they've had, like, outsized amount of success over the last, 10 years. And I think, when I met them, we were all aligned in our beliefs. And I think the other piece about it is we were all very helpful to each other. And that, to me, is where you build a network and you find those like-minded people. It's not what you can do for me. It's more, what can I do for you? Because then I become a valuable person to you. And if you can grasp that concept, then you become very valuable to people. I think the mistake that people do, young people specifically, and they'll come to me and goes, what can I do for you? Here's a problem. You're making me think. So you just added an extra step here. Instead, just tell me, hey, I'm going to do this for you. You know what I mean? Like, don't put more. That's a burden. Asking what I can do for you is a burden on that person. That you don't realize that that's what it is. It's more of like, hey, I saw you're working on this. Here are 3 things that I've noticed about that. Oh, okay. That's super interesting. That's helpful to me. So I think it's understand. That's how you build a network ultimately, right? Like you end up finding a bunch of people that kind of rely on each other for various reasons, and then they become your peers.
Yeah, you start. I love that you were building with these people in the early stages, where it's like you guys are all, guys and gals, I'm sure, you're all just trying to navigate and figure it out, and then you fast forward 20 plus years later, and now you're all extremely successful in your own lanes and doing things at higher levels. But when you have that natural relationship from the beginning, when nobody was really striving these massive successes, it just allows for this relationship to grow into something beautiful. And I feel very fortunate because when I got into the podcast game, that's what it's been. It's just been building these really solid friendships that start as friendships. And now a lot of the people that I've met through the game in the last 5 years, they're all crushing it. And it's like, I feel so lucky to like, just be around them, just to, not because I want anything out of them, just to see this growth and this energy of what is possible. And it's been so inspiring to see happen in real time.
Yeah. And like your whole crew of friends are a great example. Like you guys all kind of are all very talented, very nice people, all very helpful to each other in the community. And, you know, it's going to be exciting to see where everyone's at in 5-10 years. You know, I feel like it's such an incredible group and people, you know, the thing about success is it's like puberty.
Okay. Keep going.
So some people are late bloomers and some people will, their voice will change when they're 12. And some people's voices change when they're 18. And we all end up in the same place. But things happen to people at different times and people develop differently. And, you know, for my sake, I would say I was very young as an entrepreneur and I got a fast start. But I also made a lot of dumb mistakes. I did a lot of stupid things that, you know, caused a delay in the success that I was supposed to have. Yeah. And, you know, I always felt growing up, I was a late bloomer. And then I felt like my business career feels like that as well.
Are there any one or two mistakes that stand out the most that you kind of look back on? Not saying you regret, because obviously it helped you get to where you are today, but are there one or two things that you maybe would reconsider or have learned from the most?
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, in the early days of our subscription business, we had so much success. We had everyone and their mother offering us money.
Props to you guys, by the way. You guys are way ahead. This was like 2013, 2014, like way ahead of subscription based.
Yeah, so we were very early. We were a pioneer in the space and we didn't need money, so I didn't take it. But I didn't understand the value of having investors. And it's not just about money. It's about relationships. It's about positioning. It's about exposure. And like that's probably, I would say, one of my bigger mistakes as a founder was not just embracing the investor. You know, we just grew up in a different era. Like you didn't
do it yourself.
Yeah. And you didn't take money if you didn't need it. And so, you know, I think that would be the biggest mistake that I had. Obviously, I had a painful experience by not taking the money, you know, in years to come after that. But obviously, I've learned a lot from that and have a different view of the world now. But I think that was an important, you know, lesson for us.
Yeah. Going back to the success part, I really love the aspect of like the puberty aspect, because it's very much so true. Like some people, they hit it off the beginning and some people it takes years to come. But I think for a majority of people, and including myself, I still to this day am trying to tweak my mind to stop believing that once I have all this money, that I'm now successful and I'm not going to be happy. Was there a moment in your life when you hit a certain monetary amount, you were like, yes, this is great. I can, you know, live the lifestyle I've always wanted to live. And then it kind of switched where you're just like, but this really isn't the thing that makes me happy. It's all these other things that happen, like of me seeing a vision come to life. Like, has there ever been a moment where you kind of tweaked what you thought success was?
Yeah, I think, you know, the thing is like, I haven't had the exit in my business where it's like, life-changing amount of money. I've had a really great living for a very long time. I live very comfortably. I get to do whatever the hell I want. But I haven't sold my company, right? Like I haven't had a pile of cash dropped into my hand yet. And
yeah,
exactly. And so maybe I would have a different opinion if that happens. But I think for me, I kind of went through phases where, you know, I was making really good money in my 20s and got to do whatever the hell I wanted whenever I wanted. And I, you know, probably wasn't the happiest person in my late 20s, you know, going into like turning 30 years old. And I couldn't point I couldn't put a finger on why I was not happy. And I think it was just specifically men, I think, go through this phase in their late 20s and their early 30s where like you're trying to define who you want to be. You're trying to figure out what your life looks like as an adult. Because I don't think like you're 18, you're technically an adult. I think for men, you become an adult at 30. You're basically Peter Panning it till then.
I'm 27 right now, so this is great to hear.
Yeah. So like I mean, I thought I was 27 till I had a kid. I'm 41 years old. So basically I had no real responsibilities or had no real deep connection with another human being till I got married, Yeah. And so I think for me, what was the turning point was appreciating that, I have all these material things and I have some level of success, but I think growing up in a very close-knit family, for me, like I knew that being married and having children was something that was going to make me happy. And even though for a lot of people, it's like checking a box, it's like, oh, I got to get married. I got to have kids. I didn't view it like that. I actually felt like they're going to change the way I view the world and how I appreciate life. And that ultimately is what happened. Like I got married, we instantly had kids, and my view of the world has completely changed because I have these human beings to take care of, and I want to spend time with them, and I want them to be proud of who, their father is. So it's a very different way of living when you're taking care of someone and they look up to you and they, the way I looked up to my dad and the impact he had on my life. It's like, I want that to happen to my kids. So, at the end of the day, sure, if I'm a bazillionaire, I'm sure my kids will be happy. But at the end of your life, you're going to look at your family, your kids, your relationships. And that's all, those memories are what you're going to be able to take with you. Right. Yeah. And when you leave this planet. So I think for me, that gave me a lot of appreciation for other things outside of wealth or success or power or things that, like, when I talk to a young person, those are all the things they care about. Right. And I did too at some point in my life. And then I had kids and I got married and all these things. And I was like, oh, well, this stuff's way more important. And it makes me happier.
Yeah. You just hit, I think it was 5 years with your wife. I think her name is Haley, and you have two kids at this point, for people listening, just for context. But as somebody who's been so hungry in the business world and just building and building and building since you graduated college, how hard was it for you to carve out the time to realize, like, I can step away from business, like I should date, like, wow, I actually like this woman, maybe I should continue seeing her, like, wow, now I'm about to get married, like, that in of itself, as somebody who's so hungry, like, how did you know, or how did you give yourself that permission to, like, carve out the time to make time for that to even come to fruition, to have a wife and to have kids?
I think, like everything else, you got to make it a priority. For me, I was reaching an age. I think, so I've been blessed because I had resources and I had a successful business. I kind of got to do whatever the hell I wanted. And so I got to travel the world. I got to experience some of the most insane things that I've got to experience in anyone's life. I got to hang out. I got to do all these things. And I was like, that's good. I did it all. Wow. Like, I felt like I was, as far as like what I wanted my youth of my life to be, I did it. I did it way more than I ever thought I would. I couldn't imagine doing the things that I did if I was 14 years old, 16 years old, and said, that's going to be my life. And since I did that, I was like, all right, what's the next phase of life? Wow. And to me, it was family, because I thought that would kind of complete the story of like what I think my life should be.
That's so cool that, like, to be able to have that reflective moment of, like, you've done a lot of great shit and you can still, to a certain extent, do a lot of, crazy experiences within reason, but to have that shift and to recognize, like, okay, this was a great chapter. Now it's time to, like, reprioritize and and find the future wife and set myself up to be able to have kids. Like that takes a lot of self-awareness and just being real with yourself of like, this is what I want. And now, there's no regrets of the last 8-10 years, but like, let's course correct and start working towards this next chapter.
Yeah, exactly. Like the same way you would have goals in your personal life or your business life, you have to, and I'm not saying getting married and have kids is for everybody. It was for me. It was something that I thought was the right fit for the life that I wanted to live. So it was perfect. Like I found the person that I knew I could spend the rest of my life with and who I thought we could build an incredible family together. And then I found, we had kids and we adjusted our life for our children, and I adjusted my work life around that. And I'm able to work as hard as I've ever worked in my life and still get to be a parent. It just puts a little bit more stress in the mornings and the nights and whatever. But, there's a saying like, this is not like, life is not a dress rehearsal. So like, what are you doing?
My father has been saying that. I've never had somebody bring this up in a podcast in 300 episodes. My father has been saying that to me since I was a kid. When it comes to life, there is no dress rehearsal. It's like in my brain.
Yeah. So if there's no dress rehearsal, like if you're not going and doing something to the fullest, you're going to regret it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think going off of that, something that I had heard in a past interview about you was that you've never been afraid to fail, which I think is like, that's what allows you to like live your life to the fullest and check off these boxes. But how has having that mindset, whether it is in business or just any other bucket of your life, how has that allowed you to really go after the things that you've wanted and not be creating these like, well, what if it doesn't work? What if it fails? Like just going full speed ahead.
Yeah, I think, look, I didn't have that earlier in my life. It was definitely something that's developed probably late 20s, early 30s. And it really came with confidence because I have no problem if it's anything public now where I make a mistake, something happens, I fail, whatever it is, like to just own it and accept it and move on. And I think it's really confidence more so than anything. And it's that, okay, this didn't work out and I'm not perfect. And I know that. Like, I make fucking mistakes like everybody else.
Yeah. And we tend to think that people are watching our every move or that people are going to like make fun of us or give a shit, but nobody ever cares when you fail. They only care when you succeed. So it's like, just keep falling on your face and getting back up because literally everyone else is afraid to do the same thing. And they're so caught up in picking themselves back up from failures and trying things that in reality, nobody's going to care until you hit these massive successes or any amount of success. And then they're like, clapping it up and, want to have the conversation with you.
Exactly. And I think that's when you have that realization that like, I realized probably in the last 5 years, only in the last 5 years, that nobody actually gives a shit about anyone else is doing.
It's the truth.
Like everyone is too self-absorbed to care what anyone else is doing. Like, so why are you worried what other people think of you?
Yeah. And it allows you just, once you have that light bulb moment, it's like you're off to the races. It really just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As of today, it might be 10 businesses at this point, but I think you are involved in about 10 plus businesses, at least that you've co-founded or that you oversee. And I think you are part of a venture fund as well. But I think as of right now, you have over 10 businesses, over 100 employees operating these different companies. And that might have changed since some of these interviews that I've seen. But what have you learned to be the key in time management to make sure you're not skipping out on any of these businesses?
I think it's really hard to answer that properly. I think the right answer, which is not what people want to hear, is you just have to prioritize different things at different times and things will get left behind. Like there are brands, there are business parts of our business that just don't get attention because it's, we're doing too much sometimes. And I think that's been a challenge of mine is that, so Damon John, who started Fubu and Shark Tank host.
That's your boy.
Yeah, good friend. You know what he always used to tell me? He's like, you're drowning in opportunity.
Wow. It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, but it's a problem. It's a real problem. And I think someone like myself, fortunate, knock on wood, have a good reputation, have built nice relationships, people always come to me first for incredible opportunities. So it's very, very hard to say no. So that's been the toughest skill for me to slowly acquire, is just say, no, I can't do this. And I think that is something that I'm learning now in life, that I have to say no.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's even like doing the research for this, it's like really unbelievable to be able to have. Now, obviously you didn't start all these businesses at the same time. It's been phases where like you
Yeah.
jumpstart one, you get it set up,
Yeah.
it's running itself. Now it's time to start the next one. But
Yeah.
to be able to like actually take on that many businesses at any one time, I mean, that takes a lot of brain power to know, like, compartmentalizing of like, today's focus is Grand Running Club for the next 2 hours, and then we're going to shift gears to this business. And it's yeah.
And I mean, it's not necessarily a good strategy, to be honest. Just me living it, like, it may be better if I had just focused and doubled down and tripled down on the things that are working extremely well. So
Yeah.
it's something that I've learned to now manage a little bit better, but wouldn't recommend it.
What have been two lessons that you've learned in being a leader? 100 plus employees. Obviously, they don't all directly report to you, but you still have to have some type of leadership skills to keep everything moving.
Yeah. So I think the couple things. It's one is like empathy. I think people. You mentioned self-awareness earlier. Like, people need to be self-aware of other people's situations. And so when you have a workforce of all kinds of different people in all different walks of life, like, you got to be empathetic to people's situations and learn how to navigate it. And there is no playbook, because new stuff is happening every day. So I think empathy is like a huge, huge part of it. And then I think the second part, which has been a challenge for me, is not everyone is the right fit for your company. And when they're not the right fit, you're doing that person a disservice by keeping them there. And when I realized that, it made me a lot more comfortable with letting people go and saying, you know what, you're not a right fit. And in fact, by you not being a right fit here, it means you're probably a better fit somewhere else.
And then that eventually gets a better fit for your position. So it ends up being a win-win.
Exactly. And I think at the time when we've had those conversations with employees, they were obviously frustrated or angry. And then years later, being around so long, it's like we have people that have worked with us for so long. They're now in different companies. They'll come and thank me and be like, dude, the best thing you ever did was tell me to leave.
Wow. Do you think now it's a little bit different now because where we are with the whole pandemic, a lot of people are starting to go back to offices. And so it's a little bit different than when it first hit. I'm curious, like, when it first hit, you're remote, right? Probably for at least the first 6 months. How much do you find you were operating at a higher, faster level because you have no distractions? You're not in an office. People can't just walk in and pull you for your time. Like, you pretty much are able to build a boundary around Dee throughout the day. And like, if you're not ready to take that call, you can just pass on it. Or, excuse me, I don't want to say you're just going to pass on a call, but like, if somebody's calling you out of the blue, like, you don't have to pick it up. Whereas if they're in your office, they could easily just come walk in your door. Like, did you find that you were able to operate any different when you were just enclosed to yourself versus being back in an office?
I think I was able to think better, but I think the challenge depends on your life, right? So like, I'm married with kids. My kids were home. Like,
Okay,
it was
true.
not easy
True.
being at home. Like, I was taking Zoom calls in the closet, hiding from my kids. And so it was quite difficult. And frankly, I was in the office after the first week when they said you can't go. We quietly showed up here every single day and
Wow.
worked, because my hours got condensed because of just trying to be helpful at home. But like, it was too, like, it's very tough. And if you're single and you live by yourself, then you have that flexibility. As a parent, the world is very different for you. So, I did feel like we accomplished a lot during the pandemic. I think some people thrived and were incredible, and I think some people struggled and became irrelevant in the organization because we forgot about them.
Yeah.
And so I think depending on your personality and your work ethic, it could have been a great experience or a terrible experience.
Yeah, definitely case by case scenario depending on the person. Group chat podcast. Once again,
Yes.
the number one podcast in the world, baby. Key to podcasting is you need to be your most authentic self if you want to stand out and resonate with people, because that's how you build your identity and your brand, and then people can then relate to and they get to know you for who you are. How did you learn to give yourself permission to just be who you are and not try to be someone you're not? You've been in the podcast space since I think 2017, so you're talking 4 years in now. You're definitely a much different host now than you probably were 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was when you kind of get over that hump of worried about what people will think or say to you based on what you believe or say. When you can get over that and just be yourself, then it becomes a very different experience. Like I don't feel like I have to hold anything back when I'm doing the podcast. I get to be myself.
Oh, I could see it and I can feel it. And I love it. And I love it. That's the best.
And by the way, there's so many people that come up to me and say, I don't agree with anything you believe in. I don't really like you on the podcast.
But they're listening.
Yeah. So, but at the very least, they're engaged, and then I've gotten thousands of people that come up to me and goes, dude, like you changed my life, the way you think, the way you operate, like you've been a big inspiration for me. So I think you're going to find people that connect with you, and then you're going to find people that don't connect with you. But like at the end of the day, they're tuned in because we're being real, right?
Yeah.
Like all the biggest podcasts in the world are very authentic hosts. They are who they are, and they're not putting on a show. And that's why the medium is so awesome, is that it's not TV. On TV, people are being somebody else, a news host, an interviewer. They're playing a game. Whereas in podcast, you're just being yourself. And that's why the medium is so big.
Yeah, it's so raw. I think back even when I was in high school, I had the idea of wanting to start a blog and never did, because I'd start writing a sentence and then I'd start overanalyzing that sentence, where when I had the light bulb moment of like, maybe I should get into the podcast space, I was like, I like talking. I'm a people's person. Oh, wait, I can't overthink anything. Like once we're recording, there is no going back. So I think that's been one of the biggest beauties in being in the space. Something that I talk about a lot on this podcast is about the importance of not letting our emotions bottle up within us, which, and I talk about it quite often on this podcast, and I push people to find these mediums to express themselves. How has sharing your voice through the world, through a podcast, been that medium of expression for you? Because I would imagine, like, you have your business all day long. This becomes an outlet where you can kind of just let it all out. And then, when you go home at the end of the night, you've gotten out everything you probably needed to say on the podcast. So now you can go home and just, sit back, relax, and actually be present with your family.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Like it is an incredible outlet. It's addicting. I think it's awesome to have these open-ended conversations. The co-hosts are my brother and a business partner that, we've all known each other a very long time. So there's a free-flowing conversation where we don't, even as podcast hosts, we don't have to hold anything back. But like, I think the beauty is like, you don't realize what you're saying is actually impacting people. And I think that's when you get really excited about it, because you're like, someone changed their life because of something you said on the podcast.
Yeah.
And that happens every week. Somebody DMs me and says, I changed my career. I became a millionaire. I sold my business. I did this. And I'm just like, wow. Like, it's kind of like even days where we're tired and, our wives are mad at us. We're just like, fuck, we got to do this. And it feels like we are now, obligated to do it for good obligation, because it's empowering people. Yeah. And, it's about like, I'm all about trying to make an impact in my community. And so this is a way to do it at scale.
Yeah. The beauty of the format of what you guys do, which is you guys would normally have these conversations even if there wasn't a podcast. So it's like, let's just turn on the mics. Let's just share it with the world.
Yeah.
And I have to sometimes check myself because I'm like, wow, I forget. People are actually listening to the words that we're saying right now. And it's like, it's such as a podcast listener, as I know, like when you're listening to a podcast, you have headphones in or you're in a car by yourself and like, you're really just you could be doing anything in the world, traveling on a plane, doing laundry, riding your bike, going for a run. And you were just so tapped into this conversation. It's really like a very intimate experience that I sometimes forget until I'm listening to a podcast. I'm like, that resonated so much with me. And I'm like, fuck, I hope people are having the same experience with some of the content I'm producing. Cause that's like the end all goal and the entire point of wanting to do it from the beginning.
Yeah. And I think they are. You just, you'll know about it, later in life, but like these conversations that you're having with folks, imagine being able to listen to this stuff as a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old, an 18-year-old. Like we didn't have access. We got access only to what the institution provided us access to, which is, institution of mainstream press or whatever watered down education that we all got. And so we didn't get exposed to everything. Whatever you're interested in, you could find a podcast or a YouTube video to soak that information up. It's like pretty phenomenal.
I know everything is at our fingertips. Whatever you want, just go on and Google it. You brought him up. One of your, I don't think you said his name, but one of your co-hosts, Drama. Yeah. Chris has been a very pivotal person in getting me to where I am as a podcaster because he started Short Story Long 3 months before I started my first podcast, Purpose in the Youth. Fast forward, ended up doing a podcast with him back in April of 2018. It was a massive moment as somebody that had grown up watching him on MTV. Your relationship with him starts off as this business relationship with you behind the scenes co-founding Young and Reckless. And then it evolves into it feels like a brotherhood now, just seeing where you guys are at in that relationship. But how has your friendship with Drama made you a better person?
What's interesting about Drama is when I met him, he was on MTV, he was 21 years old, and kind of just living the rock star life of a reality star on MTV, which, right now if you met someone who was a reality star on MTV today, you might laugh at that. 12 years ago, it was a rock star.
Big deal.
Like all of these guys on the Fantasy Factory and Girls were like huge stars. Yeah. Like they walked down the street, everybody knew who they were. Tens of millions of people watched these shows. And, so I basically met him when he was a kid. And what's fascinating to watch is just like how he's evolved. So he didn't go to college. He had no formal business experience. He kind of took my lead when it came to the business, started understanding and learning. And I remember vividly, I bought him a book like 8 years ago. I bought him the Steve Jobs biography. And I said, this is an incredible book. And I know you're interested in business. You should read it. And it was for his birthday, I think. And I know he didn't read it then. But then to see now, like, he's by far the most well-read person I know. Like, wow. By multiples, by 10 multiples, right? Wow. Like, the guy's knocking out a book or two a week. He's so well-read, so well-informed. And I think, like, it's pretty fascinating to see that transformation, that, like, his willpower was there where he was like, you know what? I don't know anything. I need to learn. And so he read, he started coming into the office, he started understanding the business, and like, he's now working on an incredible business and brand with his girlfriend. And I think it's pretty fascinating to watch someone transition, because most people don't transition. They just accept who they are and move on with their life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's even thinking back, like, the character that he, I would say character, right? Like he was a character on Fantasy Factory and Robin Big. That wasn't really, I don't think necessarily that's who he wanted to be. It was just like the cards he was dealt. And I think anybody in his position would have been like, yeah, I'll be like the guy that kind of gets shit on and, is like the younger cousin and blah, blah, blah. But it is a great example of somebody that has made that transition. And I think it just gives people hopefully the green light as a listener, like, you can recreate your identity at any moment in time. You just have to be willing to say to yourself, like, this is who I don't want to be anymore. This is who I want to be. Like, I'm going to start taking those steps towards it. And it doesn't happen overnight. And it takes a lot of times that quiet solitude, deep work, but it really is possible to make that change whenever you choose it.
Yeah. To that point, what he's done is phenomenal. Like, because for him, it's like he was publicly known. Most people are privately known and don't have to make that transformation public, right? Like his transformation was a public thing. So I think that was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, he's crushing it. Big fan. Hopefully one day he brings back Short Story Long. I'm a big fan of that. So hopefully he'll bring it back.
It was an incredible podcast.
Such a good show. Grand Running Club feels like a rite of passage for a ton of LA-based entrepreneurs, go-getters, and hustlers. And I gotta say, Dee, if it wasn't for Grand Running Club, I don't know if I would have been able to complete my first LA marathon this past weekend. So you guys definitely have played a huge role in getting me to believe that I actually had the ability to run a marathon. I remember at the beginning of the year, I forget the last virtual marathon. It was a virtual half marathon sometime in the end of the fall of last year, early this year. And I remember you guys were starting thing in Hollywood and working your way across. And I had just did the regular run with the group. And I wish I had a video of myself, because I was like, 13.1 miles, not a chance I'm doing this half marathon. And so to fast forward to then finally do a full marathon has been an incredible experience. And I just want to say, first off, props to you guys, because it definitely kind of what we were talking about before about surrounding yourself with people, and it makes you think different. The Grand Running Club made me see what was possible, because I was around so many people that were like, I've run multiple marathons, and I'm like, oh wow, like that's pretty phenomenal. Like I've never even considered that. So big fan of the club itself. But one aspect of the club that you love is how it connects you to so many different people. How else has the club positively impacted your life? I feel like this has been such a pivotal club and group that has been a weekly thing for quite some time now. And it probably has brought in a magnitude of value to your life.
Yeah. I mean, look, first and foremost, like, I always took the time and effort to meet with like young entrepreneurs, young people in general, and the next generation. So like it was an outlet for me to connect people in a very easy way and doing something healthy. And so for me, like this, the discipline of doing something weekly, like a run club, has been obviously a very positive impact on my health. I started it the week before my oldest son was born. So he's basically been a part of the run club journey with me. So he used to come when he was a baby. I didn't put him in the running stroller then, but when he got a little bit older and his neck was stable, he's been coming with me every single Saturday since, my oldest. And so it's part of our life. It's part of community. And, the way that I describe the run club to people is I'm basically a boutique hotel owner in a small town, and people come and go. And there's people that come, may end up staying the year with us. Some people may spend 3 weeks with us, but everyone comes and goes. And sometimes you come every summer, you come every Memorial Day weekend, whatever it is. And we see you, we embrace, we run, we talk about life, and then, we'll see you on your next trip. Wow. And I think that's really what it's become. It's like there's a handful of people, I mean, less than 5 that have kind of been with me since we've started, that still kind of consistently show up. And it's not because these other people don't want to. It's just that their life has evolved and changed. Some have become like ultra marathon runners, like Brady, who's running all
half
over
a
the
marathon
world.
A day. Unbelievable.
Yeah, marathon a day type people. And there's other people that are like, their companies exploded. They sold it. They became filthy rich, and they have different lives now. Yeah. But that doesn't mean they're not part of the community, and that doesn't mean this doesn't hold a special place in their life. It's just, the people go through phases, and I think, yeah, exactly. And you'll come and go. You'll people pop in all the time. Dude, there's people that have come, like the other day since the country opened up. A friend of mine from Kuwait came, and he's like, dude, I got to come to Run Club. Wow. People from Australia, people from London, people from all over the world will come just to run and talk and be a part of the community. It's like, it's a very powerful community. It's a very incredible group of people that I've got to meet. And for me, I'm the dad of the group. It's also inspiring just to hear everyone's stories, learn how young people are thinking. I'm always learning too, and like to me, it's an incredible way for me to learn.
Yeah, I love the way you've kind of looked at it, where it's like this. People come and go, and it's totally just like part of it. Like there's nothing against it. It's just like recognizing people go through different seasons of life, different changes. Like,
Yeah.
and the fact that you've stayed so consistent with it is like so much props to you, because, you have a family. Like Saturday mornings, you could be spending like at downtime with yourself. Like, so to see that you've been able to like hold yourself accountable to keep showing up and to keep doing that. And it's just like, it's props to you. That's really something
and
amazing.
for me, it's fun. Like I really enjoy it. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun.
Yeah. Got to sweat out the booze from the night before anyway, somehow. So it's a good way to do it. There was a caption I had read about the Grand Running Club that you had posted a couple months ago. And it just said, I hope to inspire millions to do their first mile, because after that, you'll be addicted. And I can say that is for sure the damn truth. What's the best advice you'd give to somebody that's listening who is interested in running but isn't sure how to start?
I think everyone's intimidated by running because they say, I'm not a good runner.
Yes.
There's no such thing as a bad runner.
Yeah.
So and I don't know what a good runner is either. So I think the challenge is it's for a lot of people, running is also like when I talk about running, I'm not talking about going on a treadmill, right? Like I'm talking about lacing up your sneakers, walking outside your house, and
hit the
running.
streets, baby.
Yes. Like that, because honestly, running on a treadmill to me is fucking torture.
Horrible. Absolutely horrible.
Like I'd
rather not run.
I can't even run a few miles on a treadmill, and I can run a marathon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so I think the first step is just starting. And I think the beauty of running with people is it takes off some of the concern, because we're all at different levels. Like I'm pushing a stroller when I'm running. I'm not fast.
Yeah.
There are young people running. And when you run the marathon, I think it's the real eye-opening. The marathon is an old people's race.
Mm.
It's not young people that are running the marathon.
Yeah.
Like I remember I did a triathlon when I was turning 30, and I remember like all the heats of all the different age groups, and my age group was the least amount of people. Like the guy that won was in his late 40s.
Wow.
And so, I don't think a lot of people reach their peak physical performance till later in their life, because you need to also have peak mental performance. And that's what allows you to reach that performance. And so I think the first step with running is just do it with somebody. Don't do it by yourself, because you may not have the confidence to go. A lot of people are, self-conscious of how they look when they run.
Yeah.
So they won't even go running outside. Like I run on Sunset Boulevard like every day. Like I see half my friends when I go. Yeah, I see half my friends when I go running.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't care how I look when I'm running. I enjoy it. It's fun for me.
Yeah.
But I think a great way to start is run with somebody, because then it'll change your perspective of it.
Even the self-conscious aspect, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. It's like we think that everyone's paying attention to us and watching us fail and like laughing at us. You running, nobody's be paying attention. People like, nobody cares. Like,
yeah.
And it doesn't matter about the minute per mile. It just matters, did you get from point A to point B? That's all that matters. And like, who cares, the way you look and whatnot? It really doesn't matter. But the mental toughness aspect is definitely something that I think I've learned from running. But I actually heard in a past podcast, you had talked about mental toughness is the most important characteristic of being an entrepreneur. And I'd argue that for any industry, anybody with a goal, anybody that is trying to reach their inner potential, what's the first step to building a strong mental toughness?
I think it's like how you react to information. So put aside positive news, negative news. I think if you're ultra emotional, everything becomes very, very difficult. Because you're going to get bad news delivered to you daily if you're an entrepreneur. If you want to go do anything big, it's fucking hard. It's really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
And it's how you react to information will allow you to, I don't want to say be numb, because I don't think that's the right mental state, but it's more of just like, okay, take it in, take a deep breath, and then let's figure out the solution. I think what you develop that over time, because you get delivered so much news daily as an entrepreneur. If you're constantly so emotional about everything, your life's going to be miserable. And look, at the end of the day, I know, like, I stress out about work all the time, but what am I, what's the worst? I owe a bunch of people a lot of money. Like, if everything goes, like, I still have my health. I still have my family. Like, everything goes south, then, like, you got to figure it out. Yeah, you got to figure it out, and it's going to be painful. But, like, so many people before me have had to gone through that same problem. So, as much as I get stressed out, I also been like, all right, what are you going to do? You're going to sue me? Okay, fine, sue me. It's going to take 2 years to get paid. I mean, so it's like, it is stressful, and I think I get beaten up. I got beaten up a lot during the pandemic. It really took a toll on me. Things like running, things like friendships really helped me, and doing the podcast helped me a lot. But it's hard. This shit's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think just finding practices that allow you to be mindful and pay attention to the thoughts that are in your mind, and finding ways to not emotionally attach yourself to the thoughts that arise really allow you to start sharpening the mind. And a lot of things, meditating, journaling, podcasting has allowed me to sharpen the mind, running for sure. But that's definitely a very important skill set, no matter what you're trying to do, what your goals are. Are there any certain boundaries that you've created in your life that help you operate at your highest level?
I'm not good at that. So I would say that I need to get better there. I think I'm getting better. I think what the pandemic has helped me do is, I went through this phase where I was sharing a lot of my life on social media, more just for fun, not for any other reason, just for fun. And the problem that is that encourages more communication. And I kind of just want to do things now and just enjoy it. Like, if I go out to eat with my friends, I just want to do that. Like, and I like to say to people, like, take as many pictures as you can, because, like, when you're older, you're really going to enjoy them. And I didn't do a good job of that in my 20s and 30s. My wife does a lot better job of that with our children, which is awesome. But, like, I was always very present when I did something. And I think whether it was dinner or going out, and, like, I have insane memories in my head. I don't have a lot of pictures to talk about them, but, like, I have that. And I think the boundaries that I'm setting for myself going forward is really about, like, why am I really, does it matter that I share what I ate or whatever, whatever. It's like, let me just enjoy the night. Let me just go do those things. And, like, if I go, there's so many times at, like, Run Club, I want to share, like, a picture, and, like, but, like, I'm in deep conversation with someone from the Run Club, and I want to run a little bit faster. And I was like, if I take my phone out, then I can't run as fast, and I'm going to miss out on this conversation. And so don't promote it, and I don't post it, or whatever. It's like, or, even with our brands or whatever it is, it's just like, I just really want to take the time now to be, like, more present in whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, I respect that. I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is just being self-aware of, like, what works best for you. If you want to be that person that's sharing everything and posting left and right, please do. I definitely think for myself, it's that balance of, like, pick the pockets, record a video, get the photo, but then, like, when I'm out in public, I try not to, like, I'll pick certain pockets every couple hours, like, respond to text, or, like, I'll quickly, like, skim the text, and I'm like a freaking human computer. I'm analyzing, does this need a response right now? Can it wait? Yes. Cool. Doesn't need my response. Like, worry about it tomorrow. But I definitely think it is a game of trying to balance of, like, documenting some of that journey along the way, but also, like, being present in this world is not easy to do, but most appreciative, especially for somebody, if you're running and having a conversation like that, that's very appreciative for both parties, just to be there in the moment instead of looking at the phone and seeing what else is happening around the world.
Exactly.
If you could broadcast one message to the world, what would that message be? Done a lot, still got a lot going on. Curious, if you could broadcast any one message, what would it be?
Just do what you want to do. Be who you want to be. No one gives a shit what you're doing.
It's so true.
It's crazy. I'm like sitting here, young people watching them like take social media, figuring out what to post. I'm like, yo, no one gives a shit what you're doing. Like, you're not fucking, Cristiano Ronaldo. I'm sorry. And even that, it's like, it's so instantaneous and short about like, all these things are just like blips. People go on with their life. Like, do whatever you want. Be fucking happy. It's like, even with like, look, I'm a very liberal person. I have very liberal views on life. But like, even my friends who have the opposing views, I'm like, all good, bro. Do whatever you want. Like, I don't care. Like, like I can't control people. I have my opinion. I have my way of living, and that works for me. You do what's best for you. Like, let's all like be happy.
Yeah. I wish everybody had that mindset, because that's the way it should be. Have your opinion, believe in what you want to believe. Don't come at my throat telling me I'm wrong. If you want to have a respectful, calm conversation, let's talk about it. But at the same time, like, I'm not going to sweat because I can't convince you to think one way or another.
Exactly. And I used to be like that. And now I'm just like, it's like, life's too short. Life's too precious. Like, I'd rather just not broach those topics with those people and just be friends with them.
Yeah.
Than be like, I can't be friends with them because they do X.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Yeah. Come on.
I'm just like, I'm too old for all that.
Yeah. I respect that. These are going to be the final 5. Okay. One sentence max. You can go over a little bit if you need to, but I try to keep it to one sentence max. First one, how can people learn to give themselves permission to follow their interests and their ideas?
Be open-minded.
It's good.
Be open-minded and listen to what other people have to say.
It's great. Number 2, if you could go back and tell yourself one piece of advice at any point of your life, what would it be and when?
Cut your losses. And probably like when I was 27, 28 years old.
Okay. Number 3, what's an area of your life you need to put more effort into?
Always family. I feel like I'm present, but always family.
Okay. Number 4, what is the first step that anyone can take to reaching their inner potential?
Not worry what other people think about you.
So good. So good. Last one. If somebody's listened to the last 57 minutes of this podcast, what is one challenge you have for the listeners as they wrap up listening to this podcast today?
Go listen to somebody that has opposing views of you.
And just listen to it and sit with it.
Yeah. Don't turn it off. Just listen.
That might be one of the best challenges that's ever been dropped in this podcast. So I respect that, because that's actually gonna teach you some mental toughness, because you can't allow yourself to get so caught up and like emotionally attached. You just sit there, you observe, and you keep it moving.
I just had this conversation with my mom. My mom and I, she spends a lot of time at our house with the kids, and I speak to her twice a day. And she was like, "Can you believe they?" I was like, "Mom, why do you care what they're doing?"
Yeah.
Like, they're going to be in our life no matter what. Well, let's move on.
Yeah.
Like, you're getting older. Let's just enjoy the company we have.
Yep. I feel like I have the same conversations with my mother when I get my updates on what's happening back home. So I think it's a common theme across sons and mothers for sure. Dee, this has been such a fantastic conversation. If there's any one thing I really respect and appreciate, it's people's time. As busy as you are, as the amount of things that you have going on, thank you for carving the time out today to be on this podcast. Just from afar, like, it's just unbelievable. The amount of things you've accomplished in your life, and you still to this day, like, you have the humbleness, you have this like edge of like still just building and growing. And it's very clear to me that you have you found the things that you are meant to do in this world, and you're leading by example, whether it's as an entrepreneur, whether it is for the people that attend the Grand Running Club or they listen to the group chat podcast. Just a big fan of you, man, and really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this or be on the podcast today. I'm very sure that people listening today enjoyed it and had some good takeaways after wrapping up this episode.
Amazing. Well, thank you for having me. It was an awesome conversation. And to credit to you, it wasn't like the typical interview. So I enjoyed the conversation even more because it was just, it felt like, I felt like it could be more informative to have this type of conversation for people than, hey, this is my life story.
Yeah.
That you can find anywhere.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's more enjoyable as a host when you know enough of their story that you can just flow with the conversation and you're not asking questions that if you do some digging out there, the answers are already there. So it helps me enjoy the conversation more. And hopefully, clearly, at the end of the day, I want the guests to have just as good of an experience. So that makes me happy to hear that.
Amazing. Well,
ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this podcast today, please, I have a favor to ask from you. Please screenshot this episode on whatever platform you are listening in on. Post it to your IG story. You need to tag D. He's at Dee Murthy. That is DeeMurthy. Tag him. Tag me at Bobbbaaaay. That's BO, 3 B's, 4 A's, and Y. Share out the podcast on your IG story. Let us know, what was the takeaway? How did this specific episode change your perspective? What did you learn? I am oh so curious to know. So please share it out, as well as in the description below, I will have 54 Group linked, 54group.com linked, where you can find all of Dee's businesses there. I will also have Group Chat Podcast, arguably the #1 podcast in the world. We're not going to get into that today. That'll be part 2 podcast. Please go check out Group Chat Podcast. They are at Group Chat Pod on Instagram. I will have that also linked up in the description below. Dee, is there anywhere else I should be sending people?
That's it. You got it all. I appreciate it.
That's it. Well, Dee, thank you for being on the podcast. It has been an incredible conversation.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Bearded Man Podcast. See ya.